3-year-old girl was placed by the Child Protection System into a home that no one had fully checked, a place where one person was under supervision and another man had dozens of prior convictions. For months, she disappeared from everyone's sight, yet still appeared on social media through photos that seemed ordinary, until small details began to reveal troubling signs.
Even if you think you've taken every step possible to get away with killing somebody, it's not going to work.
When everything was finally exposed, statements kept changing. Pieces of evidence gradually came to light, and a truth that shocked the entire community began to emerge, raising the question of why no one stopped this sooner, and who should truly be held responsible for Khaleesi's tragedy. Khaleesi Hope Cuthriell, born on December 5, 2017, was the daughter of Amanda Array and Ted Cuthriell, and she grew up in the Staunton and Waynesboro area of Virginia, United States. In her family's memories, she was a small child with round cheeks and a shy, dimpled smile that somehow made everyone feel warm. Khaleesi had blue eyes and thin blonde hair, a fragile appearance but always full of energy. Her mother said she was very affectionate, always cheerful, and especially quick-witted for her age. From the time she first started talking, Khaleesi could already imitate the sounds of familiar animals, like a sheep going ba-ba and a cat going meow-meow, small details that were enough to show a childhood filled with brightness.
I need to eat, please.
What do you want to eat, please?
I need to eat.
Do you want some pineapples?
No, not the pineapples. They're all gone.
They're not all gone. Mommy has a whole bowl of them in there. What do you want to eat? Are you going to tell Mommy what you want to eat?
Ted and Amanda both had children from previous relationships, but by 2020, they were living together in Waynesboro, Virginia, raising Khaleesi in what seemed to be a stable household. However, in March 2020, everything began to fracture when Amanda had to appear in court for a probation violation related to failing a substance test. In court, she admitted to struggling with addiction for about 15 years and promised to change. By April 2020, Amanda was placed into an intensive outpatient treatment program, but just a few months later, she was removed from the program for not attending any sessions. Under the terms, she was required to report to serve her sentence, but Amanda did not comply, saying she did not know who would take care of Khaleesi if she left. A warrant was quickly issued, and by October 2020, a social worker from Child Protective Services, CPS, arrived at their home to handle the situation. Amanda requested that Khaleesi stay with her father, Ted, at the house, but CPS refused because the environment had previously been associated with substance use and probation violations. She then proposed sending her daughter to live with her sister in Covington, about an hour-and-a-half drive away, but a background check revealed an open complaint involving the sister, though not clearly substantiated, which led to that option being rejected as well. In a state of panic and fear of losing custody, Amanda made another decision, placing Khaleesi with her friend, Candy Jo Royer. Candy had a young daughter around the same age and had looked after Khaleesi a few times before, and according to initial records, she had no prior CPS involvement or documented history of harming children. However, behind that appearance, Candy was struggling with substance use and was under home supervision due to multiple offenses such as petty theft, credit card fraud, and related charges. More importantly, she was living with Travis Ryan Brown, a man with at least 29 prior convictions, many involving dangerous behavior, and this decision ultimately set in motion the chain of events that would later make the entire case so haunting. CPS workers conducted a quick review of the records and found no history of dangerous behavior linked to Candy, at least on paper. From there, they moved to a temporary solution, guiding Amanda and Candy to complete an arrangement known as a diversion. On the surface, it might sound like a custody transfer, but in reality, it was only an emergency financial support mechanism, not an official guardianship decision. Under this agreement, Amanda gave up control over the financial assistance on Khaleesi's behalf, and approximately $1,500 was transferred directly to Candy. The stated purpose was to allow the new caregiver to quickly purchase essential items for a young child. Because she was under home supervision, Candy was not allowed to leave her residence, meaning she could not pick up Khaleesi herself. As a result, a social worker personally transported the child to the house on Cattle Scales Road. Upon arrival, the worker conducted a brief assessment of the living environment before leaving Khaleesi in Candy's care. However, she later admitted that she had no idea Travis Ryan Brown was also living in the home and had not conducted any background check on him. What is particularly concerning is that even though the child was personally delivered to the location, this action was not considered an official placement by CPS. In reality, the agency had never taken custody of Khaleesi and did not document her placement within any formal care system. According to CPS, they are not responsible for arrangements made outside their system, which meant there would be no scheduled check-ins or unannounced visits afterward. And from the moment they left the house on Cattle Scales Road, CPS never returned, unless a formal report was filed. Meanwhile, Amanda was taken to Middle River Regional Jail to serve her sentence, and Khaleesi was officially separated from her mother's arms. Just a few weeks later, on November 8, 2020, Candy unexpectedly posted on social media, publicly revealing the child's presence in her life for the first time. She wrote, "Travis is always posting pictures of new cars or motorcycles like they're the newest members of our family. But I want to introduce the real newest member of our family, Khaleesi." When a friend asked whose child she was, Candy replied, "Right now, she's mine. Until her parents can take care of her, we will." Along with those captions was a series of photos of Khaleesi, including a few pictures of her with Adali, the daughter of Candy and Travis. At first glance, everything looked like a normal family, small children, everyday moments, and a life that seemed peaceful. But when looking closer, certain details began to feel off. Khaleesi appeared in multiple photos wearing the same outfit. The neatly braided hair she once had seemed to be gone, but replaced by hair that looked noticeably thinner and sparser. While Adali's expression felt completely different, not like that of a happy child. Candy had publicly promised to care for Khaleesi as if she were her own child, but behind closed doors, the reality was completely different, as the little girl was gradually placed into an environment filled with seriously harmful behavior. Khaleesi's room was locked from the outside, separated from the rest of the house, while the other doors remained unchanged. Over time, Khaleesi began to show unusual signs, her hair gradually falling out, something that can happen when a child is under prolonged stress or subjected to mistreatment. On December 5th, 2020, her third birthday passed in silence, with no indication that anything special had taken place. By December 26th, 2020, Candy posted a series of Christmas photos, and once again, on the surface, it looked like a normal family, but upon closer observation, unsettling details began to emerge. Adali appeared with a long scratch across the bridge of her nose, while Khaleesi was always photographed from behind, her face almost never visible. When Candy's grandmother asked, "Where is Khaleesi?" she replied, "She's wearing the pink hat." However, in one photo, the hat had shifted, revealing a scalp that was nearly bald, with only thin, sparse strands remaining. In another part of the image, there was an unusual circular mark on her leg, along with a body that appeared thinner than expected for her age, and ears showing signs of discoloration. Taken together, as these details showed that Khaleesi was no longer the lively and healthy little girl she had been just a few months earlier. On January 12, 2021, from inside Middle River Regional Jail, Amanda made a call to her daughter, and like all calls from a correctional facility, it was recorded. When the line connected, Khaleesi's voice came through. "Mommy?" And Candy handed the phone to her. Amanda gently asked how she was doing and said, "I love you. I can't wait to see you. I miss you." And Khaleesi replied, "I love you, Mommy." That was the last time a mother ever heard her daughter's voice. Shortly after, in February 2021, Candy began giving conflicting explanations, telling the family that Khaleesi had been taken by CPS and was now living with relatives, possibly an aunt or grandmother. But when Amanda called again, the story changed. And this time Candy claimed the child was at a birthday party and couldn't come to the phone, while also asking for more money to continue caring for her. By March 2021, Ted, along with a relative, went directly to the house on Cattle Scales Road, bringing money and a phone in hopes of making it easier to stay in contact with Khaleesi. However, they were not allowed to see her, receiving only apologies and vague explanations. In the following contacts, Candy continued to change her story repeatedly. Sensing that something was wrong, Amanda wrote to CPS, asking them to check on her daughter's condition, but received no response. By early August 2021, Candy once again requested more money under the pretense of caring for Khaleesi, and although Ted continued to bring it, he was still not allowed to see his daughter. Amanda continued calling and texting Candy, even trying to reach Travis, but everything was met with silence. Then on September 3rd, 2021, while watching the news, Amanda saw a shocking report. Candy had been reported missing by her family. According to the broadcast, the last time they had contact with her was around 4 p.m. on August 24th, and such a prolonged loss of contact was considered unusual. Immediately, Amanda informed a corrections officer that this was the woman who had been caring for her 3-year-old daughter. On September 4th, 2021, officers came to the jail to speak with Amanda. She told them that Candy and Travis had completely cut off communication, and no one knew what was happening to Khaleesi. When Amanda said that CPS had helped place her daughter with Candy, but law enforcement reached out for verification and received the opposite response. The agency had no record of any official arrangement. It was later clarified that a social worker had indeed brought Khaleesi to that house, but the action was not part of any formal monitoring system, a detail that showed from the very beginning everything had existed outside the level of control that should have been in place. Sheriff Donald Smith later publicly criticized the role of CPS, stating, "It does no good when CPS does nothing to look for this child, who was separated from her mother in October 2020. During the investigation, officers located Adelie, Candy's daughter, staying with relatives, and from there uncovered a critical detail. Khaleesi was not actually with Amanda's family as previously claimed. Over the next 3 days, authorities worked with multiple individuals connected to Candy, Travis, and Amanda, before officially declaring Khaleesi a missing person. No one had seen or heard anything about her since the call on January 12, 2021. the last time she spoke with her mother. By September 10, 2021, police issued an Amber Alert, but by that point, Khaleesi had been unseen for nearly 8 months, an extremely long period in cases involving young children. Experts emphasize that the first 72 hours are always the most critical window, and as time passes without information, the chances of uncovering the truth become increasingly difficult. In this case, concerns were even greater as Travis remained unaccounted for, making the entire situation more serious and unpredictable than ever. But when Sheriff Donald began reviewing Candy's information within the justice system, he realized that she and Travis had not remained in one place, but had been moving across multiple areas in a pattern of ongoing criminal activity. Travis was being sought on a series of charges across several counties, including unauthorized use of a vehicle, theft of property, unlawful entry, and various other disruptive offenses, including deliberately evading law enforcement. Notably, there was no indication that Candy was being forced. She appeared to be actively participating alongside Travis throughout this period. Their movements eventually led them to Pennsylvania. On October 12, 2021, Pennsylvania State Police, working with federal authorities, approached a room at the Knights Inn Hotel, located at 1215 South Main Street, South Greensburg. When the pair refused to open the door, officers were forced to breach it to gain entry. Inside, they discovered multiple items related to substance use, including stolen checks and paraphernalia. However, the most critical thing was not there. There was no trace of Khaleesi. Shortly afterward, Sheriff Smith moved forward with charges related to child endangerment against both Candy and Travis, and he personally traveled to Pennsylvania multiple times to question them about Khaleesi's whereabouts. During these interviews, Travis repeatedly changed his statements, initially claiming that CPS had returned and taken Khaleesi away. When pressed further, he could not specify the last time he had seen her. Even so, Sheriff Smith continued to engage with him, later stating, "Travis agreed to meet with me without an attorney present and noted that he and Candy were no strangers to the system." During an interrogation on September 19, 2021, Travis continued to insist that he was not responsible for causing Khaleesi's tragedy, yet at the same time admitted that he had engaged in harmful behavior toward her. He described Khaleesi as a difficult-to-control child, claiming that she frequently fell and caused injuries to herself, even going so far as to say that the 3-year-old was a danger to herself. Travis also stated that he and Candy had repeatedly reached out to CPS for help, but received no response. For most of the interview, he maintained that Khaleesi was still alive, but after repeated confrontation, his story began to shift. Travis eventually admitted that the child had not survived and claimed that her remains had been left at a landfill, though he continued to deny directly causing her death. When asked to specify the location, he became emotional and broke down in tears, but not over the child's fate, rather out of concern for how he would be held accountable. He continued to insist that Candy was not involved and placed the blame entirely on Khaleesi, claiming that she had hit her head on a door frame, leading to her death. When officers expressed doubt, he responded, "That's what she did, man." Travis also said that he had attempted to provide first aid, but then lost consciousness due to substance use, and when he woke up, it was already too late. According to his account, Khaleesi was left on the floor overnight, and the next day, in a state of panic, he wrapped her in a blanket and disposed of her with the trash because he did not know what else to do. In parallel with the interrogations, investigators expanded their efforts by executing more than 50 search warrants at locations Candy and Travis had passed through, with the primary focus remaining on the house on Cattle Scales Road. Devices such as mobile phones were also seized for data analysis, and through this process, investigators determined that Travis's claim about contacting CPS was completely false. Sheriff Donald then deployed K-9 units to search the entire area surrounding the house, but no clear trace related to Khaleesi was found. Time continued to pass without results, and just 3 weeks after she was officially reported missing, during a formal press conference, the sheriff was forced to announce a shift in the investigation, from searching for a missing child to searching for remains. After being arrested in Pennsylvania, Candy and Travis accepted the initial charges and were extradited back to Virginia in early December 2021. There, both were prosecuted for offenses related to severe harm and the neglect of a child, resulting in serious consequences. Travis was held at Middle River Regional Jail, while Candy was transferred to Rockingham-Harrisonburg Regional Jail, rather than being placed in the same facility as Amanda, in order to avoid potential safety risks. Both were held without bond. By May 2022, the case escalated into a more serious phase as prosecutors upgraded the charges, including causing the death of a child under 14 with intent, and along with additional charges related to concealing the truth, conspiracy to cause harm, and other organized criminal conduct. Travis's trial began on August 28, 2023, under the supervision of Judge Shannon Sherrill. This was an especially challenging case for the prosecution, as there was no final trace of the victim. Yet investigators were still able to gather substantial physical evidence along with video footage that carried significant weight in establishing guilt. And Travis himself admitted to having caused harm to the child, even though he continued to deny directly causing the tragedy. Notably, during earlier interrogations, Travis had claimed that Candy was not involved, but once inside the courtroom, the defense strategy shifted completely. His attorney redirected responsibility toward Candy, telling the jury that even after the trial concluded, they might still not know exactly who caused the incident, how it happened, or when it occurred. He acknowledged that Travis was not an ideal caregiver, but maintained that his client did not commit the acts of harm in the way the prosecution alleged. At trial, an investigator explained why the search for Khaleesi did not yield direct results. He stated that authorities had examined trash containers linked to the couple in an effort to find critical evidence, but nothing significant was recovered, and he acknowledged that the months-long delay in collecting evidence may have caused crucial traces to disappear, while also not ruling out the possibility that Travis had altered or disposed of items beforehand. He also emphasized the massive scale of the landfill involved, as exceeding 90,000 yards, and noted that a full search of such an area could take years. Although there was limited direct evidence from the disposal site, the house on Cattle Scales Road contained signs that drew particular attention from investigators and did not align with Travis's statements. On one wall inside the home, they discovered significant marks at 2 different heights, one around 3 feet and another around 6 feet, far beyond what a small child could have caused. Even without a direct comparison sample, forensic experts used DNA from the parents for reference, and the results indicated that these traces were linked to Khaleesi. In addition, they recovered a deformed metal hanger wrapped in tape, on which strands of Khaleesi's hair were found, along with traces connected to Candy on the same object, in a detail that further reinforced the investigative direction regarding what had truly happened inside that home. During the trial, prosecutor Tim Martin called Dr. Robin Foster, an expert in child abuse, to explain the evidence to the jury. From the outset, she stated that Travis's claim that Khaleesi had caused severe injury to herself by running headfirst into a doorframe was impossible. She also emphasized that the signs visible on the child's body in the photographs were not consistent with typical accidents, even in the case of a child who frequently falls. A total of 54 photos of Khaleesi were presented in chronological order, and when placed side by side, they revealed a deeply concerning progression from a healthy and cheerful little girl to one who became increasingly thin, nearly losing all her hair, and with multiple abnormal signs appearing on her body. Highlighting numerous details within the images, including unusual injury patterns, some photos showed clear evidence of harm. Over time, her physical condition visibly deteriorated, particularly in her legs, which showed signs of swelling and discoloration, indicating a worsening condition. Not only limited to the photographs, 2 video clips presented in court made the entire courtroom heavier than ever. The first was recorded about a month after Khaleesi was brought to live with Candy and Travis. In the video, she sat on the bed in a curled position, knees pulled in, arms tightly held in front of her as if trying to protect herself. Candy and Travis repeatedly told her they did not want her there, even mentioning that they would throw her out, while also saying they would not buy her any gifts for her birthday or Christmas. They demanded that Khaleesi call them mom and dad and say that she loved them, but she did not comply. Immediately after, Travis struck her, a clearly coercive act. According to Dr. Robin Foster, this was a form of systematic psychological abuse aimed at breaking down the child's emotional state. And she pointed out that Khaleesi's eyes in the video appeared completely vacant. She did not look at anyone, did not respond, her body drawn inward as if trying to shrink her own presence. That body language, she explained, is a clear sign of a child under prolonged distress. She also emphasized that in situations like this, responsibility rarely falls on just one individual, but on all the adults present in that environment. The second video was recorded on January 12, 2021, the same day Khaleesi had her final call with her mother. In the footage, she was in a bathtub, visibly terrified, her body trembling and unable to maintain balance. Candy's voice could be heard shouting, "Khaleesi, stand up!" And although the child tried, her weakened condition prevented her from standing steadily. Prosecutor Tim Martin stated that this video likely captured the final hours before Khaleesi did not survive. As the trial entered its final stage, the defense did not present any additional witnesses and quickly rested its case immediately after the prosecution finished. In the closing argument, Prosecutor Tim Martin directly placed responsibility on both Travis and Candy, stating, "For the 3 months that followed, Travis Brown and his girlfriend committed severe acts of abuse that led to Khaleesi's death. There are no words to describe how horrific this case is. The 2 of them did this together." On the opposing side, Travis's attorney maintained the same strategy from the beginning, continuing to shift responsibility onto Candy in the final argument. After deliberation, the jury took less than 4 hours to reach a verdict, finding Travis responsible on all charges. Travis's sentencing took place on February 16, 2024, and when given the opportunity to speak, he insisted that he was not responsible, claiming that his substance dependency had caused him to focus only on his next use and prevented him from fully understanding what was happening around him. He continued by saying he did not know what had happened to Khaleesi, so while emphasizing that he appeared in only some of the images presented as evidence. Travis questioned, "Why am I being convicted for what she did?" Once again, attempting to shift responsibility onto Candy. Concluding his statement, he declared that he would be exonerated on appeal and hoped that one day people would have to apologize to him. Judge Shannon Sherrill was not swayed by these justifications, describing the conduct as cruel and outrageous, and imposed a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for the charge related to causing the child's death, along with an additional 20 years for child abuse. Following the sentencing, Travis remained in custody at Middle River Regional Jail while awaiting appeal. Earlier, on September 13, 2023, just weeks before Candy's trial was scheduled to begin, when she unexpectedly appeared at a hearing and entered a guilty plea to first-degree charges related to causing the child's death along with intentional child abuse, in exchange for the dismissal of other charges. Prosecutor Tim Martin stated that accepting the plea agreement was intended to spare Khaleesi's family from enduring another painful trial, while ensuring that Candy would be held accountable under the law. He said, "There are always inherent risks in taking a case to trial. There is always the risk of losing. This agreement spares Khaleesi's family from reliving the horror of what happened to her, and it gives us a clear path to ensure that neither of these defendants will ever walk free again." Candy's sentencing took place on February 22, 2024, and during the hearing, Amanda, Khaleesi's mother, was asked to deliver a victim impact statement. In her words, she spoke about the 54 photographs that had been presented in court, images she had never known existed before. She said, "I didn't know there were that many pictures. There are so many pictures I will never get to take of my daughter." Amanda shared that becoming Khaleesi's mother had changed her, but also left behind a void that could never be filled. In a moment that left the entire courtroom in silence, she also mentioned Candy's daughter, raising a haunting question. "I wonder if their little girl remembers that she once had a friend to play with. I wonder if their little girl is okay." When it was her turn, Candy gave her statement, beginning with an apology to Amanda. "I know there is nothing I can say or do to make things better." However, she continued to deny directly causing the tragedy, while admitting that she had failed to seek help in time. Yet when compared with what had already been presented in court, those words were difficult to accept, as the evidence had shown a very different reality, one in which the child was not only neglected, but forced to live in an environment filled with prolonged abuse. Judge Shannon Sherrill was not persuaded by Candy's apology, emphasizing that Khaleesi had still not been found, and that Candy was the one who could help uncover the truth. The sentence was then delivered. Candy was sentenced to life imprisonment. However, because she pleaded guilty at the first-degree level, under Virginia law, she may become eligible for geriatric parole at the age of 65, although this is by no means guaranteed. Prosecutor Tim Martin clarified that this form of parole is intended for elderly inmates, but all decisions depend on the severity of the case. He stated, "The only type of parole she could ever be eligible for is geriatric parole, and of course the parole board, regardless of its composition, always considers the facts of the case. So it is highly unlikely that Candy Royer will ever see the light of day again." In reality, that is extremely unlikely. Currently, Candy is serving her sentence at Fluvanna Correctional Center in Troy, Virginia, where she will face the remainder of her life after everything that has happened. After the case concluded, Prosecutor Tim Martin did not avoid addressing the role of CPS, as openly pointing out that the agency had failed significantly in protecting Khaleesi by allowing a child to remain with someone under home supervision, in the same environment as an individual with dozens of prior convictions, and then never returning to check on her. However, he also emphasized a controversial reality. Despite those serious failures, from a legal standpoint, he could not pursue criminal charges against anyone within that system. The case quickly sent shockwaves through the entire Augusta County community, not only because of what happened to Khaleesi, but also because of the long period that had passed before any search efforts were initiated. Anger spread, but alongside it came grief and a deep desire to honor a child many had never met, yet still felt connected to. On September 21st, 2021, a candlelight vigil was held, initially with hope that Khaleesi would be found safe. But when news of her death was confirmed, the gathering became a call for justice. Those in attendance prayed together and observed moments of silence in her memory. Sheriff Donald Smith was also present and spoke to the crowd, acknowledging, "This is not the outcome our community wanted." He urged everyone to cherish their families and loved ones, saying, "Hold your loved ones close. Hug your little ones tight." A simple message that carried a heavy weight after everything that had happened. There was no official funeral, no chance to say goodbye, and all that remained for the community was to find ways to keep Khaleesi's memory from fading. In early December 2021, the Augusta County Sheriff's Office set up a memorial outside its headquarters, where people could bring toys, stuffed animals, and small gifts as a way to show their love for her. Sheriff Donald Smith said, "We put up this memorial to let the public know that we are not forgetting this child." On December 5th, 2021, what would have been Khaleesi's 4th birthday, another vigil was held, where people sang happy birthday and released balloons into the sky as a gesture of remembrance. After the gathering, participants drove past the sheriff's office honking their horns, a way of reminding everyone that Khaleesi was still remembered and that there were still voices speaking for her. On December 24th, 2021, a Christmas vigil was held, with candles and lights, as people sang carols and spent time remembering her, sharing. "We decided we wanted candles and Christmas lights. We just sang Christmas songs for her. But we spent time here and let people know that we love and care about her. We are letting her know that we love and care about her. It's all for her." Even though the pain remained, the family and community gradually found comfort in faith and connection. Later on, after regaining her freedom, Amanda began rebuilding her life and expressed gratitude to those who stood by her. On August 30th, 2023, she wrote, "I just want to thank everyone for their prayers and support. My heart is still shattered, but a huge weight has been lifted. Just knowing that Khaleesi is being thought of and prayed for, and that those responsible for this tragedy are being held accountable, gives me the strength and hope to keep moving forward. God is truly good." As of the time this video is released, Khaleesi Cuthriell has still not been found, and her case remains classified as missing but presumed dead. Although sentences have been handed down and those involved have been held accountable under the law, one critical question still remains unanswered: where is Khaleesi? Authorities hope that over time, as options become increasingly limited, one of the two, especially Candy, may eventually change her decision and provide accurate information about where Khaleesi was taken. Not to alter the sentence, but perhaps to gain a small sense of peace, or simply to bring closure to a story that has remained unfinished for so many years. Khaleesi's case is a heartbreaking warning about the gaps in child protection, where just one mistake can lead to irreversible consequences, and sometimes The most frightening part is that it could have been prevented much earlier. Thank you for staying with today's story, a true crime documentary not only to tell what happened, but also to serve as a reminder. If you would like to honor Khaleesi, please leave a comment below. Don't forget to share the video, like, and subscribe to follow along with future true crime documentaries. And I'll see you in the next stories.